Welcome to this capacity building training module. In this video, we will delve into the world of gender mainstreaming. But before we dive into this intriguing topic, let's start by providing a brief yet essential context. We encourage you to stay tuned as we explain who EVTA is and the purpose of these modules. In the heart of Europe, EVTA is a dedicated organization uniting vocational education and training stakeholders, fostering knowledge exchange. EVTA is on a journey to create an ecosystem of shared expertise, addressing VET sector challenges head-on. VIP Next is a strategic 3-year work plan co-funded by the European Union. Aligned with EVTA's core mission, this project revolves around 3 key objective pillars: visibility, policy engagement, and network strengthening. The video you're watching is a vital element of our network strengthening activities. The objective is to enhance the network's capabilities through project design expertise and active participation in funding opportunities. So, with that context in mind, let's dive right into the topic of this video. We'll explore the vital subject of promoting social inclusion and equality within the VET sector. To begin our journey, let's delve into the policy landscape, specifically the significant initiatives put forth by the European Union. These commitments to equality and social inclusion are integral parts of the broader initiatives led by the von der Leyen Commission, aimed at constructing a union of equality. First, the EU Gender Equality Strategy, from 2020 to 2025, outlines a comprehensive set of policy goals and actions. The intention is making substantial advancements toward gender equality in the European Union by 2025. The primary objectives encompass ending gender-based violence, challenging and eradicating gender stereotypes, narrowing gender gaps in the labor market, achieving equal representation across various economic sectors, tackling gender pay and pension gaps, bridging the gender care gap, and attaining gender balance in decision-making and policy-making. The strategy employs a two-pronged approach that combines gender mainstreaming with specific targeted actions. It underscores the importance of considering intersectionality as a guiding principle throughout its implementation. The European Pillar of Social Rights, proclaimed in 2017 at the Gothenburg Summit by the European Parliament, Council, and Commission, is a strategic policy document that sets out 20 key principles, which serves as a guiding light towards the vision of a strong social Europe that is fair, inclusive, and full of opportunity in the 21st century. The pillar is structured around 3 main categories: equal opportunities and access to the labor market, including the key principle of gender equality, fair working conditions, and social protection and inclusion. The EU Anti-Racism Action Plan from 2020 to 2025 is an integral part of the EU's overarching Union of Equality strategy. The primary objective of this policy instrument is to address racism and racial discrimination across various levels of society. Throughout the action plan, the European Commission also commits to actively promoting more inclusive societies and prioritizes combating structural racism. The action plan sets out concrete measures and recommendations for member states to effectively address the intersectional nature of discrimination in various areas of life, including education, health, and housing. The EU Roma Strategic Framework on Equality, Inclusion, and Participation, for the period from 2020 to 2030, includes horizontal objectives and specific targets in 7 priority areas of focus: equality, inclusion, education, employment, health, and housing. It provides recommendations for member states on how to achieve the set targets and to promote effective equality, socioeconomic inclusion, and meaningful participation of Roma people. This strategic policy document takes an intersectional approach, sensitive to the combination of ethnicity with other aspects of identity and the ways in which such intersections contribute to unique experiences of discrimination. The EU LGBTIQ Equality Strategy 2020 to 2025, it represents a major step in the EU's overall commitments to build more equal and welcoming European societies for LGBTIQ people. The strategy puts forward a series of targeted actions around 4 main pillars, focusing on tackling discrimination in several areas of life, ensuring safety, building inclusive societies, and leading the call for LGBTIQ equality around the world. It pays particular attention to the diversity of LGBTIQ people's needs and to the most vulnerable, including those experiencing intersectional discrimination and trans, non-binary, and intersex people, who are among the least accepted groups in society and generally experience more discrimination and violence than others in the LGBTIQ communities. Strategy for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2021 to 2030 has as main objective to progress towards ensuring that all persons with disabilities in Europe, regardless of their sex, racial or ethnic origin, religion or belief, age or sexual orientation, enjoy their human rights, have equal opportunities, equal access to participate in society and economy, are able to decide where, how and with whom they live, and no longer experience discrimination. It contains an ambitious set of actions and flagship initiatives in various domains and has numerous priorities such as ensuring equal opportunities in and access to justice, education and culture, sports, health and housing. As we shift our focus to the VET sector, let's explore how the broader European Union policy background, particularly in terms of gender mainstreaming, directly impacts this vital area. Gender mainstreaming is not just a policy, but a commitment to ensuring that gender equality becomes an integral part of vocational education and training, and our journey will take us deeper into this crucial dimension. In the realm of VET, various policy actions stand out. The first out of 20 principles of the European Pillar of Social Rights is devoted to education, training and lifelong learning. It emphasizes that everyone has the right to quality and inclusive education, training and lifelong learning in order to maintain and acquire skills that enable them to participate fully in society and manage successfully transitions in the labor market. In other words, this principle acknowledges that education and training are not just educational pursuits but vital tools for social inclusion and economic relevance. The 2018 Council recommendation on promoting common values, inclusive education and the European dimension of teaching underscores the close link between education and social cohesion, emphasizing that inclusive education is a fundamental element in building more cohesive and equitable societies. The 2020 Council recommendation on vocational education and training for sustainable competitiveness, social fairness and resilience places a strong emphasis on making VET programs inclusive and accessible, especially for historically marginalized or disadvantaged populations. More specifically, it calls on VET programs to be inclusive and accessible for vulnerable groups, such as people with disabilities, low-qualified/skilled persons, minorities, people with migrant background and people with fewer opportunities because of their geographical location and/or their social-economically disadvantaged situation. The European Framework for Quality and Effective Apprenticeships, established in 2018, encompasses multiple initiatives aimed at advancing gender equality and fostering inclusivity within apprenticeships. This framework calls for the creation of apprenticeship programs that are accessible to everyone, irrespective of their gender, age, or background. The European Skills Agenda for Sustainable Competitiveness, Social Fairness and Resilience expresses commitment to tackling the challenges posed by evolving labor markets, promoting social fairness and ensuring that up/reskilling opportunities are accessible to all, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, disability, age, sexual orientation and locations. It emphasizes the importance of not leaving behind vulnerable populations, and it reflects a comprehensive approach to building a more inclusive and resilient European society through skills development programs. The European Gender Equality Strategy 2020 to 2025 acknowledges the importance of addressing horizontal segregation, stereotyping, and gender gaps in education and training. It expresses commitment to improving gender balance in traditionally male or female-dominated professions and tackling gender stereotypes. The strategy places special emphasis on reaching out to women who are not in education, employment, or training to ensure equal opportunities. The EU Roma Strategic Framework on Equality, Inclusion and Participation for 2020 to 2030 sets sectorial objectives at the EU level to increase equal access to quality inclusive education and long-term employment. Within this framework, there are defined targets aiming at reducing the disparity of people not in education, employment or training rate by at least 50%. The ultimate goal is to ensure that, by 2030, less than 1 in 3 Roma youth will find themselves not engaged in education, employment or training. The EU Anti-Racism Action Plan for the period 2020 to 2025 emphasizes the significance of combating discrimination within the realms of education and training. It underscores the need to establish integrated, inclusive educational and training services that are not segregated, with a specific focus on ensuring equal opportunities for disadvantaged groups. The imperative for inclusion and fairness equally applies also to digital learning and education. The Digital Education Action Plan 2021-2027 emphasizes the urgency of intensifying efforts to tackle gender disparities in digital education and training. The action plan sets specific measures to encourage women's participation in STEM fields and challenge gender stereotypes. To sum up, the European Union has put into action various legal and policy measures to advance inclusivity and gender equality in VET. These actions encompass strategies to ensure equal access to education and training for all, including women and girls, and to challenge gender-related stereotypes and biases within education and training systems. After introducing the European Equality and Social Inclusion Policy Framework, and outlining the various policy measures pertaining to education and training in general, and VET in particular, it is essential to delve into why it is imperative for the VET sector to promote social inclusion and contribute to full equality in practice. Despite technological progress and economic growth, inequalities persist in many parts of the world. Across Europe, there are significant disparities in terms of access to education, employment opportunities, and economic resources. Historically marginalized communities, including migrants, refugees, LGBTIQ people, women, persons with disabilities, ethnicized and racialized groups often face discrimination and unequal access to quality education which hinder their educational progression. These groups often lack the necessary skills and competences to successfully enter the job market and secure a decent livelihood. Moreover, when they do enter the job market, they encounter hurdles such as recruitment biases, occupational segregation, and limited access to skills development programs. These disparities not only limit individual potential but also contribute to broader social inequalities and hinder overall economic growth. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the existing inequalities, particularly in domain of education and training. As schools closed and learning shifted online, students, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds, faced challenges in terms of access to technology, a conducive learning environment, and necessary support. Additionally, training and upskilling opportunities were curtailed, hindering individuals' ability to adapt to the changing job market. The pandemic has laid bare the urgent need to address these inequalities comprehensively. Disparities across gender and various other characteristics related to vulnerability undeniably exist and pose a significant disadvantage when it comes to accessing and acquiring digital and green skills essential to facilitate and support the twin transition. These disparities not only reflect systemic inequalities but also hinder progress towards more sustainable and technologically advanced societies. The primary focus of this training module is to explore how the VET sector can actively contribute to the promotion of social inclusion and gender equality. In today's rapidly evolving world, the importance of fostering an inclusive society cannot be overstated. VET institutions are uniquely positioned to play a pivotal role in this endeavor. By equipping individuals with skills and knowledge essential for employment, VET can break down barriers and provide opportunities for marginalized and underrepresented groups. VET has a long-standing and important role in the provision of pathways to further learning or employment, as well as providing second-chance learning opportunities for people from disadvantaged backgrounds. By equipping individuals with practical skills directly relevant to the workplace, VET not only enhances individual potential but also reduces income inequality. It also serves as a means of developing essential life and interpersonal skills that are crucial for actively engaging in the community. Gender equality holds a central position in discussions surrounding equality analysis, particularly due to enduring gender disparities in all areas of life, including education and training. In VET, these disparities are visible through gender imbalanced participation in educational and training programs, and differences in the selection of fields of study. As a result, this training module will place a particular emphasis on exploring how VET can contribute to the advancement of gender equality. Furthermore, addressing both social inclusion and gender equality aligns with the European Equality Policy Framework mentioned previously, and the objectives of twin transitions as well as Sustainable Development Goals 4 and 8. These objectives stress the importance of achieving equity and social justice in both educational and labor market contexts. Therefore, this training module represents a pivotal step in ensuring that VET institutions fulfill their potential as agents of positive social change, where equal access to education, training, and employment opportunities is not merely an aspirational concept but an attainable reality for all individuals. In the next chapter in our exploration of gender mainstreaming within the VET sector, we'll dive into the fundamentals of gender mainstreaming, understanding its core principles, and how they apply to vocational education and training. Let's begin by unraveling the essential concepts that underpin this transformative approach. There are only a few practices focused on the promotion of gender equality within VET at the European level. Despite EU's commitment to gender equality and its recognition of the importance of VET in shaping a skilled workforce, the implementation of comprehensive gender equality measures in VET sector remains insufficient. Recent OECD study from 2022 on gender gaps in vocational education and training and adult learning indicates that gender differences prevails in terms of participation in VET and field of study choice. There is notably greater representation of women learners in upper secondary general programs compared to vocational programs. Gender disparities within VET sector persist, with girls and women being mainly overconcentrated in VET programs, and sectors usually with less economic value. Women learners are strongly overrepresented in caregiving fields, tending to dominate VET programs related to caregiving, education, healthcare and social services, leading to gender imbalances in these professions. Engineering, manufacturing, STEM and construction are most favored field of study among male learners, with 50% of male graduates coming from this field compared to just 10% of female graduates in OECD countries. In the context of adult learning and training, findings from the OECD study indicate that among individuals without upper secondary qualifications, women are less inclined to participate. In most countries, men with low qualifications engage in training to a considerably greater extent than their female counterparts. This unequal participation of women and girls in IVET and CVET programs contributes to the perpetuation of gender inequalities at work and in society at large. Gender stereotypes and norms continue to limit women's career choices, discouraging individuals from pursuing VET programs that don't conform to the social expectations about men's jobs and women's jobs. The scarcity of female trainers and role models in traditionally male-dominated VET fields has shown to deter women from pursuing these careers. These disparities not only hinder individual potential, but also impede societal progress by limiting access to a diverse talent pool and reinforcing outdated gender norms. Addressing these manifestations of gender disparities in the VET sector is not only a matter of justice but a necessary step toward creating a more equitable and inclusive society and workforce. In this training module, our primary focus is to highlight the importance of gender mainstreaming in the VET sector as a strategy to promote gender equality. The module's core purpose is to provide practical guidance for implementing gender mainstreaming within the VET sector. It is specifically crafted to support VET providers and stakeholders in integrating gender equality into their policies, programs, and projects. The module will delve into the fundamental concepts and key tools of gender mainstreaming. A substantial portion of the training is dedicated to explaining the role of gender analysis as the foundational element for gaining a comprehensive understanding of and effectively addressing gender disparities. It will introduce prominent gender analysis frameworks along with their corresponding tools to conduct gender-sensitive assessments. Furthermore, the module will outline crucial steps for implementing gender mainstreaming in VET and highlight available EU funding opportunities for advancing gender equality and social inclusion in vocational education and training. Additionally, it offers a valuable set of tools for putting gender mainstreaming into practice. Overall, participants will gain a comprehensive understanding of gender mainstreaming, be equipped with practical tools for implementing gender equality in the VET sector, making it more inclusive and equitable. Gender mainstreaming, or GM, is the process of assessing the implications for women and men of any planned action, including legislation, policies, programs and projects, in all areas and at all levels. According to the EIG and UN Women, GM is a strategy for making women's as well as men's concerns and experiences an integral dimension of the design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation of policies and programs in all political, economic and societal spheres so that gender inequality is not perpetuated. It requires both integrating a gender perspective into the content of different policies and programs and addressing the issue of representation of women and men in the given policy area. Women and men are not homogeneous groups, they have different needs, experiences and living conditions, including unequal access to and control over power, resources, opportunities and decision-making. The needs of both women and men can vary depending on age, ethnicity, disability, socioeconomic class, sexual orientation, gender identity, and even the specific country or region they reside in. For instance, it's crucial to consider intersectional aspects of gender inequality when developing VET policies, programs, and projects. Neglecting to address gender-related concerns in the design, execution, oversight, and assessment of VET programs could exacerbate the pre-existing gender inequalities highlighted earlier. Gender mainstreaming is a method aimed at addressing unnoticed gender inequalities, making therefore it an effective instrument to attain gender equality. Gender mainstreaming is not intended to replace specific gender equality policies or actions for the advancement of women's rights, but rather to work alongside with them, following a dual approach. It involves both integrated attention to gender equality issues, in routine processes of policymaking and program designing, and undertaking targeted actions to address specific constraints and challenges to gender equality. UN Women outlines the following as the key principles of gender mainstreaming. This is a strategy focused on achieving the objective of gender equality. It is applicable across all sectors and policy domains. It requires explicit attention to women and men and individuals with diverse gender identities to ensure their participation in, impact on, and benefit from development policies and practices. Effective implementation requires that the knowledge, concerns, priorities, experiences, and contributions of women, men, and gender-diverse people are made an integral part of all policy and planning processes, to inform and influence the direction of policy and program making, planning, and outcomes. A critical component of gender mainstreaming involves the systematic and clear identification and incorporation of gender equality issues in all objectives, procedures, and results to guarantee constructive change and outcomes that promote gender equality. To sum up, gender mainstreaming is not only intended to avoid perpetuating or exacerbating existing inequalities, which may have a negative effects on women, men, and non-binary people. It also involves analyzing the status quo, with the aim of identifying inequalities and developing interventions aimed at tackling these inequalities and undoing the mechanisms that cause them. Now that we've laid the foundation by defining gender mainstreaming, it's time to address a pivotal question. Why is gender mainstreaming of such significance within the VET sector? In this section, we'll unravel the compelling reasons that underscore the vital role of gender mainstreaming in vocational education and training. Let's explore why this principle is indispensable for fostering a more inclusive and equitable learning environment. Gender mainstreaming is of paramount importance within the vocational education and training sector for several compelling reasons. Firstly, it serves as a catalyst for advancing gender equality, a fundamental human right. It does so by dismantling the conventional obstacles that have restricted opportunities for women and other marginalized gender groups. By promoting gender equality within VET, it ensures that women have equal access to training and job opportunities in fields traditionally dominated by men, reducing occupational segregation and opening doors to economic empowerment. Secondly, gender mainstreaming in the VET sector aligns with economic objectives. With rapidly evolving job markets, it is essential to harness the full potential of the workforce. Gender equality in VET enables economies to tap into a broader talent pool and capitalize on the skills and talents of all individuals, thus contributing to increased productivity and competitiveness. Furthermore, gender mainstreaming in the VET sector addresses the societal imperative to transform perceptions and norms. By dismantling gender stereotypes and championing inclusiveness, it lays the foundation for a fairer and more just society. As a result, it enhances social unity and diminishes instances of gender-related discrimination and violence. Gender mainstreaming challenges the preconceived notions that restrict individuals to specific career choices based on their gender and societal expectations. It also encourages women to explore professions traditionally perceived as male-dominated and vice versa. This approach nurtures inclusive educational environments that celebrate diversity, ultimately leading to improved educational outcomes. In this section of our online training, we'll explore the key concepts that underpin the practice of gender mainstreaming. Understanding these fundamental terms is crucial for promoting gender equality effectively in various VET settings. Let's begin our exploration of the core concepts of gender mainstreaming. Gender. refers to the roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society at a given time considers appropriate for men and women. In addition to the social attributes and opportunities associated with being male or female, and the relationships between women and men, and girls and boys, gender also refers to the relations among women and those among men. These attributes, opportunities and relationships are socially constructed, and are learned through socialization processes. They are context, time-specific and changeable. Gender determines what is expected, allowed and valued in a woman or a man in a given context. In most societies there are differences and inequalities between women and men in responsibilities assigned, activities undertaken, access to and control over resources, as well as decision-making opportunities. Gender equality refers to the equal rights, responsibilities and opportunities of women, men, girls and boys in all their diversity. Equality does not imply sameness but that the rights of women and men will not depend on the gender they were assigned at birth. It encompasses the elimination of discrimination, bias, and systemic inequalities, fostering a society where everyone has the same access to resources, opportunities, and the ability to make choices and decisions irrespective of their gender identity. Gender equality implies that the interests, needs and priorities of all genders are taken into consideration, recognizing the diversity of different groups. Gender norms are ideas about how men and women should be and act. We internalize and learn these rules early in life. This sets up a life cycle of gender socialization and stereotyping. Put another way, gender norms are the standards and expectations to which gender identity generally conforms, within a range that defines a particular society, culture and community at that point in time. Gender gap refers to any disparity between women and men's condition or position in society. It is often used to refer to a difference in average earnings between women and men, for example, gender pay gap. However, gender gaps can be found in many areas, such as the 4 pillars that the World Economic Forum uses to calculate its gender gap index, namely, economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival and political empowerment. Gender relations are the specific subset of social relations uniting men and women as social groups in a particular community, including how power and access to and control over resources are distributed between the genders. Gender relations intersect with all other influences on social relations, including age, ethnicity, race or religion, to determine the position and identity of people in a social group. Since gender relations are a social construct, they can be transformed over time to become more equitable. Gender roles refer to social and behavioral norms that, within a specific culture, are widely considered to be socially appropriate for individuals of a specific gender. These often determine the traditional responsibilities and tasks assigned to men, women, boys and girls. Gender-specific roles are often conditioned by household structure, access to resources, specific impacts of the global economy, occurrence of conflict or disaster, and other locally relevant factors such as ecological conditions. Like gender itself, gender roles can evolve over time, in particular through the empowerment of women and transformation of masculinities. Gender stereotypes refer to preconceived ideas whereby women and men are arbitrarily assigned characteristics and roles determined and limited by their gender. Gender stereotyping can limit the development of the natural talents and abilities of girls and boys, women and men, as well as their educational and professional experiences and life opportunities in general. Whether overtly hostile, such as women are irrational, or seemingly benign, women are nurturing, harmful stereotypes perpetuate inequalities. Stereotypes are used to justify and maintain the historical relations of power of men over women as well as sexist attitudes that hold back the advancement of women. Gender stereotypes compounded and intersecting with other stereotypes have a disproportionate negative impact on certain groups of women, such as women from minority groups, women with disabilities, migrant and racialized women, etc. Gender diversity is a term that recognizes that many people's preferences and self-expression fall outside commonly understood gender norms. Gender blindness This term refers to the failure to recognize that the roles and responsibilities of men or boys and women or girls are assigned to them in specific social, cultural, economic, and political contexts and backgrounds. Projects, programs, policies, and attitudes which are gender-blind do not take into account these different roles and diverse needs. They maintain the status quo and will not help transform the unequal structure of gender relations. Gender responsive describes processes or outcomes that explicitly take gender equality perspective into account, for example through research, data collection, analyses, consultation and other processes. Gender responsiveness implies consistent and systematic attention to gender-based differences and inequalities between women and men, with a view to addressing systemic and structural constraints to gender equality, as well as underlying causes of gender inequality, discrimination, and exclusion. Processes and outcomes that are gender responsive could be laws, policies, programs, services, projects and other inputs that are formulated, planned and delivered in a manner that facilitates the achievement of gender equality. Gender transformative refers to development projects, programs and policies in which gender mainstreaming is utilized to design and implement activities that attempt to redefine gender roles and relations and promote positive gender equality results. Gender-sensitive indicators allow for the measurement of changes in the relations between women and men in a certain policy area, program or activity, as well as changes in the status or situation of women and men. Intersectionality is a tool for analysis, advocacy and policy development that addresses intersecting inequalities. It helps us understanding how different sets of identities such as ethnicity or race, gender, class, sexuality, age, disability/ability, and interconnected systems of oppression impact on access to rights and control over power and resources. An intersectional approach to gender equality acknowledges the fact that women's lives are shaped by their identities, relationships and social factors. These combine to create intersecting forms of privilege and oppression depending on a person's context and existing power structures such as patriarchy, ableism, colonialism, homophobia and racism. The transformative power of intersectionality extends beyond multiplying identity-based oppression, rather constitutes a structural analysis of the relation between systems of oppression which construct our social locations and the hierarchies of power of privilege. Key tools for gender mainstreaming encompass a range of approaches and methodologies. These include gender analysis, gender statistics, gender impact assessment, gender-sensitive institutional transformation, gender monitoring, and evaluation, among others. In this section, we will provide a brief overview of each tool within the gender mainstreaming cycle, with a special emphasis on gender analysis, recognized as the cornerstone of this process. We place a significant emphasis on gender analysis in this module because it serves as the foundational element for comprehending and addressing gender disparities comprehensively. Gender analysis enables us to identify the root causes of gender inequalities, tailor interventions, and formulate policies that lead to more equitable outcomes, making it an indispensable tool in our journey toward gender equality. The first tool on our list, gender statistics, refer to the collection, analysis, and presentation of data and information that are specifically broken down by gender, with the aim of understanding and addressing gender disparities and promoting gender equality. These statistics encompass various aspects of life, such as education, employment, health, and social roles, and are used to identify and quantify differences and inequalities between women, men, and people of other gender identities. Gender statistics play a crucial role in informing policies, programs, and initiatives designed to advance gender equality and support evidence-based decision-making in various fields. Gender impact assessment is an ex-ante evaluation or analysis of a law, policy, program that enables the anticipation of whether a particular decision or intervention is likely to produce favorable, adverse, or neutral consequences concerning gender equality. This assessment process aims to identify how these actions may differently affect individuals based on their gender identity, and it examines the potential impacts on the rights, opportunities, and well-being of women, men, and people of diverse gender identities. The goal of a gender impact assessment is to inform decision makers about the potential gender-related consequences of their actions, enabling them to make informed choices that promote gender equality and minimize any negative effects on particular gender groups. This assessment is a crucial tool in ensuring that policies and programs do not unintentionally exacerbate existing gender disparities and that they contribute to advancing gender equality. Gender stakeholders consultation encourages the active engagement of women, men and gender-diverse people in the policy formulation process, ensuring their viewpoints are acknowledged and their concerns are incorporated into policies, programs, and projects. These consultations aim to engage a diverse range of stakeholders, including government agencies, civil society organizations, women's groups, men's groups, LGBTQ+ communities, academia, and others, in order to foster a collaborative approach to addressing gender challenges and formulating policies and programs that are responsive to the needs and experiences of all gender groups. The insights gathered from these consultations help inform decision-making, advocacy efforts, and the development of strategies to advance gender equality and social justice. Gender budgeting is a comprehensive and strategic approach used by governments and organizations to incorporate a gender perspective into the budgetary process and advance gender equality. It involves the analysis, allocation, and tracking of financial resources in a way that recognizes and addresses gender inequalities and promotes gender equality. Gender budgeting aims to ensure that budget decisions consider the impact on different gender groups, and it seeks to redistribute resources to address disparities and advance the economic and social well-being of women, men, and people of diverse gender identities. This approach often involves the examination of how budget allocations affect areas such as education, healthcare, employment, and social services to enhance equity and inclusivity in resource distribution. Gender equality training. As described by UN Women, gender equality training serves as a tool, strategy, and method to facilitate individual and collective change by raising awareness, empowering through education, building knowledge, and enhancing skill development, all with the ultimate aim of advancing gender equality. It is typically conducted within organizations, educational institutions, or communities and aims to equip participants with the skills and perspectives needed to recognize, challenge, and address gender-based discrimination, bias, and stereotypes. Gender equality training fosters the development of inclusive practices and policies that support gender equity in various contexts. Gender-sensitive institutional transformation refers to a deliberate and systematic process through which organizations, institutions, and systems undergo changes and reforms to become more responsive and inclusive in addressing gender-related issues. It involves adopting policies, practices, and organizational culture that recognize and account for gender disparities, biases, and discrimination. This transformation aims to promote gender equality by removing structural and cultural barriers, fostering a more equitable and respectful environment for individuals of all gender identities, and enabling the active participation and advancement of women and marginalized gender groups within the institution. Gender monitoring is a systematic and ongoing process of collecting, analyzing, and assessing data and information to track, evaluate, and report on the progress of gender equality and the impact of policies, programs, projects, and initiatives on different gender groups. It involves the continuous measurement and examination of gender-specific outcomes, disparities, and changes, with the aim of identifying areas where gender-based inequalities persist or where advancements are being made. Gender monitoring helps ensure that gender considerations are integrated into decision-making and policy implementation, facilitating evidence-based adjustments to promote gender equality. This process is a fundamental component of gender mainstreaming and accountability in various sectors and organizations. Individuals tasked with monitoring should possess knowledge and expertise in gender-related matters. Gender-responsive evaluation is a systematic and thorough assessment of policies, programs, projects, or activities to determine their effectiveness in promoting gender equality and addressing the unique needs and challenges of different gender groups. This evaluation process aims at 1. Assessing the advancement made toward attaining the specified gender-related objectives and targets outlined in policies, programs, and projects. 2. Evaluating from a gender perspective the relevant processes, activities, outputs, outcomes and impacts of an intervention. This evaluation seeks to identify both the successes and shortcomings of these initiatives in advancing gender equality. Gender evaluation often includes the assessment of how resources are allocated, the distribution of benefits, and the extent to which gender considerations are integrated throughout the initiative. The findings from gender evaluation are used to inform decision-making, improve program design, and enhance the integration of gender-responsive approaches in various contexts. Gender audit. A gender audit is a comprehensive assessment tool or review process that focuses on evaluating and analyzing the extent to which gender equality and women's rights are promoted and upheld within an organization, including in their policies, programs, projects and/or provision of services, structures, proceedings and budgets. This examination aims to identify disparities, discrimination, and inequities based on gender, all with the aim of promoting increased gender equality and inclusiveness across an organization's various activities. Gender audit also assists in evaluating how an organization's performance and its management affect gender equality within the organization. Lastly, a tool we will focus in particular is gender analysis. Is considered as cornerstone and starting point of gender mainstreaming. The European Commission defines gender analysis as the study of differences in the conditions, needs, participation rates, access to resources and development, control of assets, decision-making powers, between women and men in their assigned gender roles. Gender analysis allows for the development interventions that address gender inequalities and meet the different needs of women, men and gender-diverse people. According to UN and EIG, gender analysis is an effective instrument to 1. To identify areas of gender inequalities, discrimination, exclusion, specific challenges and constraints as well as measures required to tackle to them. 2. Reveal opportunities for capitalizing on the knowledge, experience, contributions and leadership of women, men and gender-diverse persons, and for meeting their self-articulated needs, priorities and aspirations. 3. It acknowledges that policies, programs, and projects can have different effects on women, men and gender-diverse people. A comprehensive gender analysis enables policymakers, program and project managers to gain insights on gender inequalities in given sector. This analysis goes beyond describing the context-specific gender inequalities but also explores the root causes and consequences of gender disparities and discrimination for the affected group. By understanding the underlying causes of gender inequalities, it becomes possible to establish effective goals and strategies to eliminate these inequalities. Gender analysis plays a pivotal role in enhancing the gender responsiveness of policies, programs and projects, ensuring that the needs of all members of the society are appropriately considered and addressed. It is often carried out during the initial design of a policy or project or before the implementation of an intervention. How does gender analysis work? Gender analysis starts by identifying gender inequalities at macro level, focusing on the broad context of political, economic, and socio-cultural factors. It can identify the power relationships and power inequalities through which gender-based inequality, discrimination and exclusion are created, reinforced and sustained. The complex interplay of power dynamics between women and men are not confined solely to domestic spheres, but they also manifest in various contexts such as labor market, workplaces, educational institutions and political and administrative bodies. Hence, a context-specific analysis of the underlying causes of gender inequality at individual and community levels is required. The main steps for conducting a gender analysis include 1. Collecting available data and identifying information that offer insights into the state of gender equality within a specific setting. It is important to ensure that collected data are broken down by gender as well as other factors such as age, ethnicity, and disability. 2. Identifying gender differences and the underlying causes of gender inequalities to tackle the source of disparities and to fully meet the different needs of women and men. Failing to do so can result in unforeseen consequences of policies, programs and projects, potentially leading to intervention failure or further inequalities and discrimination. When gender inequalities are found within a specific setting, they must be scrutinized to determine both their cause and consequences. This step consists of understanding how a given intervention or policy action will affect the everyday lives of women and defining the differences between women and men in the policy area, with regard to rights, participation and representation, access to and use of resources, social norms that affect gender roles and relations, and gender-specific behavior. Gender analysis frameworks. Numerous frameworks exist for conducting gender analysis. These tools help in raising questions, analyzing data, and devising strategies to enhance the involvement and gender-balanced representation in policies, projects, and programs. The GA frameworks have been developed to address different facets of gender equality and are adaptable to different policy priorities, programs, or projects. Among other ones, a renowned gender analysis framework stands out: the Harvard Analytical Framework. It was among the initial frameworks developed in 1985 with the scope to identify and understand gender differences in allocation of resources and involvement within the economy. This framework delineates the individuals engaged in each activity, identifies those with access to and authority over resources, and assesses their impact on gender roles. To achieve this, the framework consists of 4 interconnected elements, 3 instruments for gender analysis, and a checklist designed to evaluate a project, proposal, or intervention through a gender lens, utilizing gender-segregated data and capturing the various impacts of social change on both men and women. The first tool is the activity profile, which identifies all relevant productive and reproductive tasks, addressing the question, who does what? The level of detail required may vary based on the project's nature. It is advisable to incorporate a temporal aspect, delineating the percentage of time allocated to each activity, whether it's performed on a seasonal or daily basis. The second tool is Access and Control Profile, Resources and Benefits. This tool allows users to list resources that use to carry out the activities identified in the activity profile. It reveals whether these resources are accessible to either women or men, identifies who has control over their utilization, and specifies who reaps the advantages of a household's or community's resource utilization. Access here refers to the ability to utilize a resource, while the person in charge of a resource holds the ultimate authority to decide how it is employed, including the option to sell it. The third tool is Influencing Factors. This instrument assists in mapping out the elements that impact the differences in the gender division of labor, access, and control as listed in the 2 above-mentioned tools. These influencing factors encompass everything that shapes gender dynamics and determines different opportunities and constraints for men and women. These factors are extensive, comprehensive, and interconnected. The objective of this tool is to assist you in identifying external constraints and opportunities that should be considered when strategizing your development projects. The fourth tool, Checklist for Project Cycle Analysis. This tool consists of a series of questions designed to assist you to examine a project proposal from a gender perspective, using gender disaggregated data and capturing the different effects of social change on women and men. You can find the full template for this analysis in the description of this video. Main requisites for facilitating gender mainstreaming include the following: institutional/organizational commitment. There must be a clear and sustained commitment at the highest levels of organization or leadership to promote gender equality and integrate gender considerations into all aspects of decision-making. Gender analysis. Regular and comprehensive gender analysis should be conducted to understand how organizational policies, programs, and projects impact different gender groups. This analysis helps in identifying gaps and inequalities within the VET sector. Gender expertise. Organizations and institutions should have access to gender experts or personnel trained in gender issues who can provide guidance and ensure that gender considerations are integrated into all processes. Sufficient resources. Sufficient resources need to be made available for gender mainstreaming. This includes allocating adequate budgets and time for the integration of gender perspectives. Consider allocating resources for initiatives that raise awareness and enhance capacity, and think about the potential utilization of external expertise for this purpose. Stakeholder engagement. Engage with women's organizations, civil society, and other stakeholders to obtain their input and perspectives in the decision-making process. Ensure that women and men, especially those from marginalized groups, are actively involved in decision-making processes and have a say in the design and implementation of policies and programs. Monitoring and evaluation. Establish mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the impact of gender mainstreaming efforts. Regular assessments help in tracking progress and making necessary adjustments. Awareness and advocacy. Promote awareness about the importance of gender mainstreaming among all stakeholders and advocate for its integration into various sectors. Key steps for gender mainstreaming in VET. As previously explained, gender mainstreaming in VET is a process that involves integrating a gender perspective into all policies, programs, and practices to ensure equal opportunities and outcomes for individuals of all genders. Here are the main steps to consider when mainstreaming gender perspective in VET. Carry out a contextual analysis. Conduct a context-specific gender analysis to understand the existing gender inequalities and challenges in VET sector. Identify any gender-specific barriers that may exist in VET programs and policies. Develop a gender strategy that outlines the organization's commitments to gender mainstreaming in VET. It is important setting smart objectives and targets for gender mainstreaming in VET. Integrate gender into curricula design and implementation. Review and adapt VET curricula to ensure they are gender responsive and inclusive. Ensure that curricula challenge gender stereotypes and promote gender equality. Provide gender equality training for VET teachers and staff. Provide training and capacity building for VET teachers, trainers, and staff on gender sensitivity and awareness. Encourage and support individuals of all genders to access and participate in VET programs, including traditionally underrepresented groups. In particular, encourage women's involvement in non-traditional vocations, such as STEM, and address any accessibility issues that may affect participation. Provide gender-sensitive career guidance and counseling services to help students make informed choices about their vocational paths. Monitoring and evaluation. Establish a gender-responsive monitoring and evaluation system to assess the impact of gender mainstreaming efforts. This requires the collection and analysis of gender disaggregated data on regular basis. Stakeholder engagement. Actively seek input and feedback from students, staff, and other relevant stakeholders to continuously improve gender mainstreaming in VET. Gender-responsive resources management. Allocate resources, including funding and materials, to support gender mainstreaming efforts. Raising awareness and communication. Communicate the organization's commitment to gender equality and the progress being made in gender mainstreaming. Capacity building and partnerships. Collaborate with relevant organizations, government agencies, and civil society groups working on gender-related issues. Build the capacity of VET institutions to effectively implement gender mainstreaming. Report and accountability. Generate periodic reports on the progress of gender mainstreaming efforts and hold the organization accountable for achieving gender equality goals. Gender equality and social inclusion are currently financed through a vast array of actions under various EU funding programs and ad hoc instruments. The following funding programs under the Multi-Annual Financial Framework for 2021 to 2027 are accessible to vocational education and training providers to advance equality, non-discrimination, and social inclusion. Horizon Europe, a European Commission program, promotes social inclusion by supporting research and innovation projects that address inequalities. It offers funding opportunities for innovative solutions, encouraging collaboration among researchers and stakeholders to create a society that is more inclusive. European Social Fund Plus, ESF Plus, finances the implementation of the principles from the European Pillar for Social Rights through actions in the areas of employment, education and skills, and social inclusion. In all its investments, the ESF Plus will promote the horizontal principles of gender equality, respect for fundamental rights, equal opportunities, and non-discrimination. The Citizens, Equality, Rights and Values program aims to protect and promote union rights and values as enshrined in the EU treaties and the Charter of Fundamental Rights. It seeks to support and develop open, rights-based, democratic, equal and inclusive societies based on the rule of law. The program finances actions that advance equality, rights, gender equality, citizens' engagement and participation in the democratic life, and, as well as the values of the Union, while combating discrimination and gender-based violence. The Erasmus Plus program supports the educational, professional and personal development of people in education, training, youth and sport, to contribute to sustainable growth, quality jobs and social cohesion, to drive innovation and to strengthen European identity and active citizenship. The funding program focuses on 3 horizontal priorities: inclusion and diversity, digital transformation, environmental sustainability. It finances actions that seek to promote equal opportunities and access, inclusion, diversity and fairness in education and training. Resources and tools on gender mainstreaming. In this section, you will find a collection of valuable resources and practical tools to enhance your understanding and application of gender mainstreaming principles. These materials are mostly designed by gender experts to support your efforts in gender mainstreaming. We will provide links to these resources attached to this video. This online training module has provided a solid foundation for understanding the core concepts of gender mainstreaming. You now comprehend the importance of integrating gender equality considerations into VET policies, programs, projects, and activities. We've emphasized that gender equality is not merely an overarching societal objective but an indispensable component of the VET landscape. It's clear that addressing systemic gender inequalities and biases is essential for providing equitable learning opportunities. You have learnt about the essential tools of gender mainstreaming and the principal frameworks for gender analysis which help in identifying and addressing root causes of gender inequalities. This online module has presented a clear, step-by-step approach for implementing gender mainstreaming in VET domain, furnishing participants with the capacity to put their knowledge into practice. It has also provided a brief introduction to European Union policy and financial frameworks that support the advancement of equality and social inclusion in education and training. The need to build the capacity of VET staff and stakeholders to effectively implement gender mainstreaming was emphasized. You are also made aware of available resources and tools that can support your gender mainstreaming efforts. In conclusion, this training module equipped you with the knowledge, tools, and motivation needed to drive gender mainstreaming efforts within the VET sector. By integrating a gender perspective into VET policies, programs, and activities, you can contribute to a more inclusive and supportive learning environment for all students, regardless of their gender. Together, we can champion gender equality and work towards a more diverse and inclusive VET sector. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening adventure, and we look forward to what lies ahead in the exciting world of vocational education and training.